Welcome to the Non-Obvious Book Awards. I am your host, Rohit Bhargava, and it is time. It's time to announce the best books of the year. It's been 6 months of judging. It's been countless hours reading, more than 1,000 submissions as usual, and we are about to announce the winners. And this is a book awards program that is meant to be non-obvious. And people sometimes ask me, well, what does that mean? And we only look at nonfiction books, but I'm a reader. I've always been a reader. And I read two things in the last 2 weeks, and I wanted to share them because I think it's the reason why we do these awards. And the first one is this from the New York Times, which was the 100 notable books of 2025, followed the following week by this feature, which is the best books of 2025. And in the notable books, the 100 notable books, there were probably 5, maybe less than 5 that you would consider to be like focused on business. And in the best books of 2025, there were exactly 0. And this is part of the problem because I think that there are a ton of business books that come out and they can make you better at work and they can make you better at life if we just evangelize them. And the problem is in the book world, business books are a small category. And so when we started these book awards programs, we wanted to celebrate the fact that these books can make you better, not just at work and in life, but they can make all of our lives better. Because if we have better leaders who we're working with, and if we have better people who are behind these companies, like that makes a difference. So what are these book awards? These are the world's largest free book awards programs. And let me tell you why that matters. There are a lot of awards programs, and some of them are kind of expensive to enter. And so not every book gets that sort of funding or takes that next step to enter into all of these awards. But the non-obvious book awards, there's no cost to enter. The only criteria is that it has to be a book published in the past year and that it has to have 2 physical copies that they can be sent to us. And because of that, we consider all sorts of books that oftentimes don't get considered for awards. And that's one of the things that we're really proud of. So we've been doing this for about 11 years, and we get submissions from a lot of different publishers. We get a lot of attention on these book awards. What we do and what we've already done is release our long list. And the long list is the top 100 books from all of the books that were submitted. So that's a little less than 10%, the top 10%. And then in this show, we share the top 15. So there's 10 that are on the shortlist, and then there's 5 specific winners in a couple of different categories. So there's the most original book of the year, the most entertaining book, the most shareable book, the most useful book, and the most important book. So those are all the announcements that we're going to do today. And the program for the day is that we're going to talk about some of the book awards winners. And then I'm going to do a bit of a retrospective over the past year in terms of 12 specific trends that really stood out as themes across many different books. And I think this is meant to capture the zeitgeist of what was going on in the world. And then some of the best book titles, great book covers, and the shortlist announcement and the winners. Here are the top 100 books on the Non-Obvious Book Awards long list. What an amazing collection of books. All of them are fantastic, and I definitely recommend you can pick up any one of them. And as we were reading through those and many of the other submissions, we started to uncover some trends across these books. And so let's take a look at some of the trends that really stood out for us, the top 12 trends throughout all of these nonfiction books for the year of 2025. Last year, one of the biggest trends we saw in books was the idea that we needed to find a way to save humanity from this growth of technology. And this year, it's evolved to the next step, which was the answer. Because the answer to saving humanity is to have people with more high morals in charge of it. We have to program the technology in order to have it do what we want instead of taking over and destroying us all. And all of these books talked about that rebirth of morality and why that's going to be important moving forward, finding that new moral code and the morality challenge of doing that at scale. The next trend was this advice to do less, want less, seek less, maybe have a little less ambition. One of the books in this category was advocating to dream small. This is not the type of advice you usually get from self-help books, but more and more, these books were talking about how there's a joy to be found when we can avoid that race to always acquire more stuff or get more things. And so there were books about someone who lost it all in a fire and then had to rebuild. There was another book about how we should try and have no new things for 30 days. I mean, all of these books talked about having less physical stuff, but also maybe dreaming of acquiring less in terms of wealth and assets and all of those other things as well. So the joy of less. The next one was making art and the power of choosing to prioritize that in your life. So whether it's doing more writing or doing more painting or drawing more frequently, or just embracing that thing that was a hobby and that was a passion. A lot of these books were talking about rediscovering your imagination, being a little more playful. All of those are about finding art, making more art, and finding real passion through doing those things. The next one, the fourth trend, was embracing risk and uncertainty. And some of these books, Safe Danger, Thinking Like an Explorer, Finding Uncertainty, or Making Your Own Luck, and using uncertainty as your superpower. I mean, all of these themes were around embracing the fact that sometimes there isn't that definite thing. The next one was to stop people pleasing. This word fawning came up over and over again, which was just trying to keep everyone happy. And instead of just trying to keep the peace, maybe there's a power in putting yourself first. There was a book about having your selfish year. There was another one about having a discord within your family and just letting it be and not trying to fix it. Many of these books talked about how if you prioritize yourself, sometimes it means that you have to stop doing certain things in order to do other things as well. The price of being nice might actually be quite high. And instead, maybe you need to put yourself first. Another one was about financial trauma and this sense that we're living in a world now where there are people who are actively manipulating it against us and making it so that the rich get richer and many others are struggling to get ahead. And this category was all about how that system is creating problems that we can also demand to be fixed. And financial trauma was this sense that, yeah, we're in this traumatic moment because of that divide, but we could also get past it if we were able to focus on it. And many of the books propose solutions to be able to do that too. The next one was take a break. Don't spend so much time running from one thing to the next. Don't always be connected to technology. Breathe a little bit more. Have some more solitude. Don't succumb to all the noise around you. All of these were basically talking about the power of just putting more rest into your days. The next one was lessons from elsewhere. There was a great one called Please Yell at My Kids, which was about like parenting lessons from other cultures. And there was another one from a gentleman who spent many years living in many foreign cultures and said, this is what you can learn from all of these places. There was a book about what you can learn from the joy of work from the Danish. Letters from Japan. All of these books talked about how there are lessons to be learned from other cultures if we're willing to listen. This next one was trust your intuition. Trust the things you already know. What is the way to put your gut feeling higher in the priority list instead of always trying to find the right data or get the right advice? Maybe it's just trusting yourself, trusting your inner voice, and not questioning it quite so much. And all of these books talked about doing that, putting your intuition first. Another one was how do we make work better? How do we make our bosses better? How do we manage upwards? How do we not be the devil boss that emails at midnight? How do we rethink work? How do we be a leader, a good leader, even if we've never had one? How do we talk a little bit nicer to one another? All of these were focused on specific ways to make work better. And this is one of the reasons why I love business books, because imagine that person at work who really needs to read this book, embracing these lessons and becoming better at what they do, and how that might affect your life. Or, maybe you're the person, right? Because we all have our own self-improvement journeys to go on. And a lot of these books talked about how you could get better, how you could never become that devil boss because you know these behaviors that you're going to avoid. And that's one of the great things that these books laid out. This next one was about lessons from nature. So lessons from animals, how animals think, how they sense, what we can take away if we pay attention to how they interact with one another. Lessons from nature, which is something that a lot of times people do know, but we forget. And these books all brought that back to life. And that was really powerful. And finally, we had the political books. Many of these books talked about what do we do when democracy is under fire, is under attack from many different leaders from across the world, and particularly in the US. How do we rediscover the ideals of democracy, and how do we make sure that we do move forward in a world that doesn't have oligarchs and that doesn't put power concentrated into very, very few people's hands? Those were the 12 biggest trends from this past year. We are moving towards the shortlist and the winner announcement. And the last thing that I want to share with you before we do are my picks for the best book titles and book covers of the year. So the way that they're chosen is essentially based on the way that they promote the books out into the world and help them get seen. One of the biggest challenges when it comes to writing a book and getting it out in the world is, how do you get people to find it? How do you make it discoverable? And having a great title and subtitle that is shareable, and having a cover that stands out on the shelf or in thumbnails when you're browsing online in online bookstores, those are the ways to do it. So these are not being judged based on art. They're being judged based on whether they work for the business books. And so the best titles of the year. The first one was Add a Zero. And I thought this one really worked because it gives you exactly what you're going to get from the book. And this one is all about making more money. Who wouldn't want to add a zero, right? Carpet Diem, great pun, beautiful book, amazing illustrations inside as well, but it really just gives you exactly what the book's going to be. And I love a good pun. Propaganda, sometimes a made-up word works really well for a title, and this one did a good job of telling you how the police and media manipulate our news. Propaganda, really good word. Enshittification from Cory Doctorow. This is actually a word that he had coined that has become a meme now. And so it was an obvious title for his book because it's become one of the words that he's been known for to bring out into our language and vocabulary now. And you kind of want to know what that's about, enshittification, why the internet made things worse. Hate the Game. This is another one that uses an element of a cliche or a phrase that we know. And I typically like that when it comes to to titles for books, because it's recognizable immediately. And it tells you that this is going to be about how to circumvent that. Hello, Cruel World. Great flip of Goodbye, Cruel World, strategies for raising terrific kids in terrifying times. This one actually landed on our list, not just because of the title, but great subtitle. Raising terrific kids in terrifying times speaks to any parent who's dealing with this right now. Prose to the People is a fantastic coffee table book all about African-American Black-owned bookstores. And it's a beautiful book, but Prose to the People is a great way to bring to life the mission behind a lot of these bookstores, which is to share these powerful ideas and to give that power, that prose, back to the people through books and through reading books and through knowledge. The next one that made our list was The Separation of Church and Hate. Great title and great mission too. What a powerful idea for a book to remind us all that true believers of most religions don't believe in hate. They don't believe in violence. They believe in something different. The haves and the have-yachts. The people who have the most money are the ones who have the yachts. And so it's kind of a perfect way to talk about the wealth divide and bring it to life through a visual metaphor that most people will get because we all know who has the yachts. and who has the biggest yachts. And the last one was a memoir called Walk Like a Girl from Prabal Gurung, who talks about what it was like to live his life and the difficulties that he encountered, and how this phrase, when directed towards him, was used as an insult for many years until he reclaimed it. So those were some of the best titles of the year. And let's take a look at some of the best covers of the year. The first one, A Trick of the Mind. I mean, you can sort of see exactly what that does in the cover itself, how the brain invents your reality. It's sort of one of those mind puzzle type images. Really worked on the cover. This one, CSMD, How We Think About the Future, Could, Should, Might, Don't. I dare you to look at any bookshelf and not immediately have your eyes drawn to this cover. It was just that standout in terms of how it popped. And for that reason, I thought this one has to be on our list of the best book covers, because it really stands out, especially if you look at the actual spine of the book. So I'll show you what that looks like. You can see how it pops on the spine of the book as well. Dinner with King Tut, a lot of detail in this cover, and I thought it really worked. Again, great title, but also the detail of the cover art was what really sold this one to us. How to Sell Out, The Hidden Cost of Being a Black Writer. Really stark. This one's super simple, but again, sometimes it's just title that stands out for being ironic, but also have a really powerful message behind it. Sometimes the best thing you can do is really put that title front and center, and the unique color choices and the way that it popped. Motherland was just a nice visual metaphor. I mean, it has the iconic kind of Russian doll as part of it, but without sacrificing legibility, because that's one of the big challenges. You get a visual metaphor, and sometimes that overtakes everything else. And in this case, it really didn't do that. Outraged just stood out because it's simple. The exclamation point is perfect for outrage. And the balance of the subtitle, it was just really nice and symmetrical, the way that it was done. And I think the next one kind of has that too. When you think about the second life, having a child in the digital age, the diaper pin combined with the internet search box were sort of perfect framing metaphors for the topic of the book. The next one, Slither, was interesting because it's a book about snakes, and so it could get really gruesome. A lot of people are afraid of snakes, myself included, and so putting a snake on the cover might be visually unappealing. And the fact that it was done illustrated really helped this book stand out. And if you look at the spine of this book, so if you look at the book itself, and then the spine kind of pops with a color, and then it goes back and the illustration continues on the back. So the flow of this book from the front cover to the back cover, from a cover design point of view, was really strong. This next one you may have seen. This book's everywhere. And I think that part of the reason is that the cover design really does stand out. And this is another great example also of understanding the power of the author. Because in general, when you have an author like Mel Robbins, who a lot of people know, you want her name to be as prominent as the title. And in this case, they do that. And the last one on the list is all about capitalism and sugar. And it uses the iconic branding of a sugar brand. And so immediately you can recognize, just based on the branding of the book, what this book is going to be about. But they also managed to do that really nice thing of keeping it generic enough that they're not infringing on someone's copyright. And that is not an easy thing to do. All right, it's the big moment. It's the time for the Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist. And these are the winners of the shortlist this year for 2025. And the first big winner is Enshittification. I mentioned this book before because of the great title, but that was not the only thing we loved about this book from journalist Cory Doctorow. This book really explained exactly why the things that we experience online have gotten shittier and why it's inevitable, but also what it takes to fix it. So for each one of these books, I want to give you a little quote from the book. And for Enshittification, it's this. Enshittification isn't just a way to say something got worse. It's an analysis that explains the way an online service gets worse and how that worsening unfolds, and the contagion that's causing everything to get worse all at once. I wrote this book to propose a cure. This book tries to offer a way to fix everything that is wrong with the internet and change the trajectory of things getting shittier all around us. And for that reason, Enshittification is our pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2025 shortlist. In a fast-moving world, who's going to keep tradition alive? Our next pick from the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2025 shortlist is Custodians of Wonder, a book all about the people who are keeping the world's traditions alive. Here's an excerpt from the book. So often we hear stories about the first person to do something, the innovators, the pioneers, the ones who move us forward. But rarely is there a whisper for the last person to carry on a tradition. What's at risk of being lost with their disappearance is nothing less than the world's local, whimsical soul. Through a series of stories, the author Elliot Stein goes into some of the world's most remote places to talk to some of the people who are keeping culture and traditions alive, about the work that they do, why they do it, and what might happen if their knowledge is lost to the next generation. For all of those reasons, and bringing tradition back to life and making sure that we honor these traditions instead of losing them, Custodians of Wonder is our pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2025 shortlist. Just about every week, there's a new phrase coming up on social media that makes it seem pretty hard to keep up with language itself. It's enough to make you feel old. Our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist 2025 is Algospeak, a book all about how social media is changing our language. Here's an excerpt from the book. Algorithms aren't just giving us euphemistic substitutions. They're playing a defining role in every aspect of modern etymology. They shape who gets exposed to certain words, how those words spread, shaping our vocabulary and identities. This is a book all about how social media can not just transform language, but also can shape our culture based on what sorts of things get shown to more people through the algorithms. So Algospeak brings to life, yes, the evolving nature of language through slang, which has kind of always been there. But the added element of that is, what role do the algorithms and social media itself play in which words get popularized and how our language gets shifted based on what the technology chooses to elevate and show us. For all of those reasons, Algospeak is one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2025 shortlist. Is there such a thing as a genius? Our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards takes a look at that, and it is called The Genius Myth by journalist Helen Lewis. The genius myth is this idea that we need to explore whether geniuses actually exist. And that's what the book is about. And it's a notoriously difficult idea to prove. I mean, what is the criteria to judge whether someone is a genius? Can they be a genius if their idea didn't take off? If their idea did take off, does success make them a genius? These are all the sorts of questions that Helen tackles in this book. And let's take a look at an excerpt. No matter how talented a person is, to be accepted as a genius, they need a story to be woven around them. I wish that we would move back to the ancient idea of genius, something that is found in particular actions or specific works. And that's basically the argument of this book, that instead of describing some people as geniuses, maybe we describe certain actions or things that they do as genius. And that may be the better way to talk about genius. But the genius myth perpetuates itself. It is all around us. And this book explores whether that is a good thing or what we might think as an alternative. So for all of those reasons, The Genius Myth is our pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist 2025. How much do you think about the hidden rules that are all around you? As a student of behavioral economics, I've been studying hidden rules for a long time, and this next pick talks all about how that happens. Lucky by Design is about the hidden economics of getting more of what you want. And this is a book about being more successful by seeing the rules that other people typically don't see. Let's take a look at an excerpt. Without understanding the rules of the game, you might assume that your outcomes are determined mostly by luck. But there are rules, often hidden and complex rules, that determine who gets what. When you aren't aware of them, you often wind up losing. This is a book about not losing because you didn't understand those unwritten rules of a situation. And sometimes it's about empathy and reading those rules, and through the empathy of understanding what other people's behaviors are. Sometimes it's just about knowing the actual rules that no one told you, but you could have accessed if you studied what a situation accounted and needed. So for all of those reasons, and spotlighting the hidden rules that justify who gets what and how we win, Lucky by Design is one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2025. Do you know how the things around you get made, the stuff that you are surrounded by? I don't, and you probably don't either. And our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist talks about exactly that. How Things Are Made by Tim Minshall aims to answer this question of manufacturing and what it takes to make the things that we consume. Here's an excerpt from the book. The reality is that you and I need to change what and how we choose to buy. If we understand more about what goes on in the manufacturing world and how it interacts with every aspect of our lives, we can make choices that are better for our families, our communities, and our planet. And that is the argument of this book, that if we all had more knowledge about how things are actually made, we might choose differently in what we consume and in what we purchase. And those choices can shape the world economy and can shape the world for the better. And so for all of those reasons and illuminating how things are made, this book is our pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2025. What is social media doing to our brains and our society? If that's a question that you want to get the answer to, our next book and next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist is one that will definitely help. Super Bloom by Nicholas Carr is all about how social media and technologies are tearing us apart. Here's an excerpt from the book. We live today in a perpetual super bloom, not of flowers, but of messages. We spend our days sharing information, connected as never before, but the more we communicate, the worse things seem to get. This book talks about exactly how things have gotten worse and what we might be able to do to fight back. There's a little bit of messages around here around the idea that like how our brains have changed as a result of social media, and the book does talk about that. But it also offers a antidote to that in rewiring our brains and in understanding exactly why we're so hyped up by all of these things that happen on social media and how our brains are getting manipulated so that we can take back that control and not lose ourselves to social media. So for all of those reasons, Super Bloom is one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2025. Imagine if you could actually read minds. Our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2025 is Read Your Mind by mentalist Oz Perlman. And this book talks about his techniques and what he's learned by training as a mentalist. So let's take a look at an excerpt from the book. Letting people get a win, giving them that win, or inviting them to feel like they're in on the trick, tells them you're not trying to steal attention away from them. It's important to make people feel like they have agency, that they have choice within the set of parameters that you give them. This was a quote about Perlman talking with someone about how he handles hecklers, people who are trying to ruin his show, basically. But it's really indicative of the way that he thinks. The book is filled with stories of what he has learned by paying attention to people, really observing human behavior. I mean, he talks about being a teenager waiting tables and understanding that if he was waiting tables and doing magic tricks, at what moment should he approach them where they would be most receptive to actually give him a good tip versus him interrupting them. And really the message that comes through as he talks about being a mentalist and not really revealing his tricks, which you wouldn't expect him to, but talking about the way his mind works and what he's trained himself to do, the message that really comes through is that we all have to get better at reading people by paying attention to those details in the things that they tell us and the things that they do and the way that they act. And to me, the book was really a powerful reminder of that. So for those reasons, Read Your Mind is one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2025. Humans have a unique behavior to name things that are inanimate or things that don't need a name. We name our pets, we name our baseball bats, we name our guitars. There's a word for this. It's called anthropomorphism. Luckily, our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards did not choose that as the title. Instead, this book is called Humanish from Justin Gregg, What Talking to Your Cat or Naming Your Car Reveals About the Uniquely Human Need to Humanize. Let's take a look at an excerpt. A knock-on effect of treating an inanimate object as if it has feelings is that the object remains in better condition and thus more functional for a longer period of time. Anthropomorphism was the key to caring. This fascinating book looks at why we name these things, but also the effect that it has on our psychology in terms of how we treat these things, how we relate to them, and how we relate to one another as a result of this uniquely human behavior. So it explores something that is curious, but that is immediately understandable because most of us probably have done this with something at some point in our lives. For all of those reasons, Humanish is one of our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Shortlist 2025. In the business world, we hear a lot about being a mentor, but what if the real key is being a sponsor instead? Our next pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards is The Doors You Can Open by Rosalind Chow. Let me share an excerpt from the book with you. I want to offer a different approach to networks and relationships, one that reconsiders how we assess value and worth. Instead of focusing on what we ourselves can give or get from others, we can focus on who we can help others to find. We can open doors for other people. We can be sponsors. The idea of sponsorship is that you're speaking someone's name in rooms that they're not in. And it's not just about the one-to-one mentorship. It's about taking that next step. And so for anybody who wants to be an ally or think about how you can help other people to achieve the most success by going beyond mentoring, this is an excellent book to help. And for those reasons, it was our pick to join the Non-Obvious Shortlist. The most shareable book of the year is usually a viral story or idea that we just can't help talking about and giving to other people. And this year, for the Non-Obvious Book Awards, our pick was Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams. This book was a fascinating read about everything that has happened over the past several years when it comes to Facebook, which then was retitled to Meta. So let's take a look at an excerpt from Careless People. You'd hope that people who amass the kind of power Facebook has would learn a sense of responsibility, but they don't show any sign of having done so. In fact, I see the opposite. The more they see the consequences of their actions, the less of an F Mark and Facebook's leadership give. This book was one that I encountered when I was traveling, and I took it on a plane, and I really couldn't put it down. And after I did that, I started talking about it with others and found that I was sharing it with more and more people. And this one was really interesting, not just because of the insider perspective. I mean, the author of the book worked at Facebook in their public policy team for 6 years before being ousted. And so really had a front seat to a lot of the things that were going on. But it's just really shocking because it challenges one of the biggest things that a lot of people think, which is that a lot of the negative impact of Facebook over the years has been the result of just pure greed. And greed is a part of the story, but a bigger thing that was shocking to me was just how little so much of Facebook's leadership cared about the negative aspects of what they were doing. And her conclusion is pretty sobering, which is that they could have made just as much money, but actually had some ethics as well. And it's sad, it's depressing, but it really is eye-opening. And for all of those reasons, Careless People was our pick for the most original book of 2025 in the Non-Obvious Book Awards. One of the best things about business books is how useful and practical they can be. And our category for the most useful book is typically a book that has really great lessons that you can implement and use right away. And our pick this year for the most useful book in the Non-Obvious Book Awards was Wild Courage, Go After What You Want and Get It by Jenny Wood. Let's take a look at an excerpt from the book. In my experience, most of our wild ambitions are more realistic than we think. When people talk to me about their lifelong goals, they act as though they're about to share an outrageous fantasy, only to point out something eminently achievable. What was interesting about this book was that it really focused on traits that typically we don't see as positive things: being weird or selfish or shameless, obsessed, nosy, manipulative, brutal, reckless, bossy. These are all qualities that usually you would be advised against. And yet this book talks about how to do all of those things and do them in a positive way. It's got a very practical way of implementing these. It's got beautiful chapter summaries to allow you to take the lessons and use them in your daily life. And it offers a counterintuitive perspective about some advice that you don't typically hear. And it's definitely non-obvious for that reason. So Wild Courage was our pick for the most useful book of Non-Obvious Book Awards 2025. How will we tell stories in the next decade? Our pick for the most entertaining book of the year was all about The Future of Storytelling by Charles Melcher. And this book really did some pretty interesting things. So let me share an excerpt with you first, and then I want to show you this book. The exciting reality is that a revolution in storytelling is taking place, and it's going to have profound implications in almost every field. So what are stories that immerse, embody, and respond to the audience called? Living stories. So in this book, Charlie does some pretty interesting things. I mean, it is a coffee table book in the sense that it shows all of these different stories and immersive stories and experiences. But the book itself is quite interesting too, because it's a hardcover book. And if you take off the dust jacket here, the dust jacket itself tells a story. So this dust jacket unfolds and opens into 12 different stories that can be refolded and replaced back on the dust jacket. So I'm folding it right now into the actual cover that is featured, and I can put that on the book, or I can fold it the opposite way and put a different cover on the book. So I'm going to try and do that right now. Fold a different cover and put that on the book and see what that looks like. So it's totally customizable in the sense of putting a different dust jacket on, but it's also totally customizable in how you share it with someone. So there is a different cover for the book. So I've accomplished that, but also I shared the whole message of the story, which is in the book. And it is all about rethinking the way that we do storytelling. And if this is fascinating for you, I also did have Charlie on my podcast where we did something a bit unusual also, which is that we did a 2-part podcast episode where part 1 was on my podcast talking about how to create amazing stories. And part 2 was on his podcast, the Future of Storytelling podcast. And it's all about how to be part of what he calls the actience. So not the audience, but the actience, someone who's active in the storytelling itself. So for all of those reasons, the Future of Storytelling was our pick for the Non-Obvious Book Awards Most Entertaining Book of 2025. Archaeology was supposed to be exciting, according to Indiana Jones. But the reality of archaeology is actually just people digging up stuff. But there is a form of archaeology that is much more exciting called experimental archaeology. And our pick for the most original book of 2025 in the Non-Obvious Book Awards focuses on that. Dinner with King Tut: How Rogue Archaeologists Are Recreating the Sights, Sounds, Smells, and Tastes of Lost Civilizations. And what made this book so original was the combination of fiction and nonfiction storytelling. So in each chapter, the author looks at a different region and time period of history and paints a portrait of that time, tells the story of a fictional character from that time, and then physically goes to those regions to try and do the things that those people used to do at that time, including making their own weapons, trying to cut up an elephant carcass and see how difficult that is with these invented tools. All of these experiences really bring history to life. And that was one of the things that I used to love about Indiana Jones as a kid, that it managed to bring history to life in an interesting way. And that's what this book really did for me. And I couldn't put it down as I was going through the combination of the fictional stories and then going back to the author's travels, it made me want to travel more. It made me want to read more history, but it was just one of the more interesting ways that I've ever seen history and archaeology presented together. And for those reasons, Dinner with King Tut was our pick for the most original book of the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2025. An important book is one that has a world-changing idea. And our pick for this year's most important book in the Non-Obvious Book Awards was Moral Ambition by Rutger Bregman. This is a book about how we need people to think if humanity is going to get better. And one of the trends I shared in the biggest trends of the year in 2025 was the morality challenge, this idea that we have to increasingly be making more moral choices when it comes to technology and what we choose to build and what we choose not to build. But in this book, what Rutger talks about is the school of moral ambition, and the sense that the people who change the world for the positive are not the ones who try and build the biggest thing or move the fastest when it comes to technology. It's the ones who have the most ethics. It's the ones who have the biggest morals. It's the ones who want to create the most impact in making a positive difference in people's lives. Here's an excerpt from the book. The trouble with idealists who lack ambition is that they tend to prize awareness more than action. What if they'd put their talent towards something that really matters? Because so many others waste their talents, people with moral ambition can make a world of difference. And imagine what sort of world we would have if more of the smartest, most ambitious people in the world chose to practice whatever they do with ambition and morality. And that's the idea, the basic idea of this book. And for that reason, Moral Ambition was our pick for the most important book in the Non-Obvious Book Awards 2025. And that is a wrap. Those were our picks for the Non-Obvious Book Awards shortlist winners, the trends, the best book covers, the best book titles. Thank you so much for joining me for yet another year of book picks. If you love these sorts of ideas and these sorts of conversations, please head on over to the Non-Obvious podcast and check out my conversations, many of them with some of the authors that were featured today. Check out my Non-Obvious newsletter and be a part of the book awards next year by suggesting books that we should consider. And if you're an author, make sure to submit your book as well to the Non-Obvious 2026 Book Awards when we open those in June. Thank you so much for joining me, and just a quick reminder to always read non-obviously.